Have you ever paused in the middle of a storm in your life when everything feels like it's falling apart and wondered, why is this happening to me? Or maybe you've looked back at a painful experience from your past and realized it shaped you in ways you never could have imagined. What if I told you that every moment of joy and every ounce of pain, each heartbreak, success, and failure are all part of a grander path, a journey not of chance but of soul evolution? Today we'll walk together through that mystical and transformative process, the soul's long journey from unconscious beginnings to enlightened being. A path filled with symbolic challenges and sacred lessons, each orchestrated not to destroy us, but to awaken us. This is not just spiritual fluff or poetic metaphor. Across every ancient tradition, from the Vedas of India to the teachings of the Kabbalah, from Buddhist reincarnation to the mystic Christian Gnostics, one central idea remains constant. We are not merely human beings having occasional spiritual experiences. We are in truth eternal souls having temporary human experiences. But these experiences are not arbitrary. They are chosen. They are encoded with purpose. They are the curriculum of the soul. So what is soul evolution really? It is the process by which our consciousness matures lifetime after lifetime through the lessons of love, power, suffering, surrender, service, and ultimately unity. We begin our journey as fragments of the divine pure potential, unformed like seeds buried in cosmic soil. At first, our experiences are simple and reactive survival pleasure pain. We are like children learning to walk, stumbling through life, seeking only to satisfy needs and avoid fear. But life, being the master teacher, refuses to let us remain stagnant. Each time we grasp onto something, whether it's control, ego status, or comfort, life gently and sometimes violently pries it from our grip. Why? Because the soul cannot evolve in comfort. It evolves in confrontation with the self. In the early stages of our evolution, we are often caught in loops, repeating the same mistakes, chasing the same hollow dreams, running from the same unhealed wounds. These loops are karmic, not as punishment, but as repetition until the lesson is learned. The universe isn't cruel, it's just persistent. It whispers at first, then it nudges, then it roars. And if we still don't listen, it shatters everything, so we're forced to look. What we call bad luck or rock bottom is often divine intervention, a sacred rupture. The soul cries out not for more pleasure, but for more truth. And truth often comes dressed as pain. So how do we overcome life's challenges once we understand this deeper context? The answer is not in resistance, but in alignment. To begin, we must stop seeing suffering as failure. Instead, we must learn to ask, what is this experience trying to teach me? What part of me is being asked to die so something deeper can be born? Every challenge, every betrayal, every illness or loss is a sacred invitation to return to our center, to realign with love, to peel back the layers of identity that we've wrapped around ourselves thinking they protect us when, in reality, they block our growth. The ego says this should not be happening. The soul says this is exactly what I need to become, who I really am. And that's when the shift begins. The moment we stop reacting and start observing. The moment we stop asking, why me, and start asking, what now? That's when the soul begins to awaken. Now, this journey is not linear, it's spiral. We revisit old patterns, old fears, but each time we do, we are a little more aware, a little less reactive. Like a snake shedding its skin, we are constantly invited to release outdated versions of ourselves. This can feel like dying, but it's a sacred death. The death of illusion, the death of false power, the death of control. And in that death, the soul is reborn, stronger, softer, wiser. This is soul alchemy, pain into power, suffering into wisdom, fear into freedom. But none of this happens quickly. There are no shortcuts on the soul's path, only depth, only honesty, only courage. And that's where you come in. Because whether you realize it or not, you are already on this journey. Every moment of self-reflection, every time you choose love over fear, truth over comfort, you are evolving. You are rising. You are remembering who you really are. You are a soul infinite and eternal, shaped by stardust and spirit, here to experience it all, the joy and the grief, the light and the shadow, so that you may one day return home, not as you were, but as who you've become. In the beginning of the soul's journey through the human experience, there is a rawness, a primal instinct driven not by choice but by survival. This is the earliest stage of soul evolution, where the consciousness is still deeply embedded in the physical form, unaware of its divine origin, operating more as a creature of reaction than reflection. In these early incarnations, the soul doesn't yet possess memory of its sacred nature. It identifies solely with the body, the environment, and the immediate needs of survival. Hunger, fear, dominance, reproduction, these form the framework of its experience. It is not evil nor broken. It is simply unconscious, much like a child who has not yet learned the difference between right and wrong. There is innocence in this stage, but also limitation. Life is experienced as a battlefield, a place where the strongest survive and the weakest perish. The soul in this phase learns about action and consequence, often through violence or trauma. It's not that suffering is the goal, but that intensity of experience is necessary to spark awareness. Through repetition of incarnations, the soul begins to form a sense of identity, not just I am hungry, but I am me. This moment is crucial. The birth of ego consciousness, while often criticized in spiritual circles, is actually a necessary step in the evolution of the soul. The ego provides contrast form, boundary. Without it, the soul cannot distinguish itself from others, cannot make conscious choices, cannot understand its own shadows. Just as a seed must break through the soil to seek sunlight, the soul must break through the density of unconsciousness to seek truth. And this doesn't happen overnight. It happens over many lifetimes through many forms and roles. One life, the soul, may be the oppressor, another the oppressed. One life, the betrayer, another the betrayed. Each experience carves deeper awareness into the soul's essence, like rivers carving canyons over time. The pain of being abandoned teaches the soul the value of loyalty. The sting of failure teaches humility. The grief of losing someone awakens the knowing that love is not possession, it is presence. Slowly, very slowly, the soul begins to ask questions that transcend the material world. Why am I here? What is the purpose of all this? Is there more to life than what I can see and touch? This marks the shift from unconscious survival to conscious seeking. The soul has now entered the phase of individualization, not just biologically, but spiritually. It starts to understand that it is more than its thoughts, more than its roles, more than its body. And with that realization comes both liberation and loneliness. For to awaken is to separate even momentarily from the collective sleep of the world. Friends may drift, desires may shift. The old goals that once seemed so urgent, wealth, fame, control, may start to feel hollow. And yet this is not regression. It is evolution. The soul is growing out of old skins, and like any growth, it comes with pain. Think of it like this: in the early stages, the soul is like molten metal, shapeless, reactive, subject to every force around it. But as it endures the fires of life, it begins to take form. The heat is not the enemy, it is the sculptor. And in time, that metal becomes a blade, a tool, a mirror, capable not only of shaping its own fate, but of reflecting the divine essence within everything it touches. This is where the soul first recognizes, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become through it. That sentence becomes a turning point. The soul, once bound by instinct, now begins to move toward intention. It seeks knowledge, not just experience, wisdom, not just information, connection, not just company. It begins to sense that life is not random. It is layered with symbols, synchronicities, signs. The soul begins to feel drawn toward beauty, silence, nature, sacred texts. These are not distractions. They are echoes, reminders of the higher home it once knew and is now slowly remembering. But this remembering is fragile. The ego, still strong, will resist. It will argue, distract, seduce. It will say, don't look too deep. Stay comfortable. Stay safe. Stay small. And sometimes the soul listens. It falls back asleep. But it never forgets entirely. Because once the seed of awakening is planted, no matter how long it takes, it will bloom again. That is the promise. That is the process. That is soul evolution. As the soul begins to awaken from the slumber of unconscious existence, it enters a phase that is both enlightening and deeply humbling, the realization of karma. Karma is often misunderstood as some divine punishment system, but in truth it is a mirror, a cosmic law of reflection, not revenge. Every thought, every intention, every action generates a ripple in the energetic fabric of reality, and those ripples return not to harm but to teach. In the karmic phase of soul evolution, the soul starts to see the interconnectedness of all things. It understands that what is done to another is in time done to the self. This is not metaphorical, this is energetic law. The soul sees how a lie told in one life creates confusion in the next, how betrayal planted in one timeline becomes heartbreak harvested in another, how acts of compassion and truth become light along the path ahead. The soul begins to comprehend that nothing is wasted. No suffering, no joy, no cruelty, no grace. Everything becomes a lesson encoded with sacred precision. And yet the karmic loops are often the hardest to break, because they are born from deep patterns, inherited wounds, and unconscious vows. A soul that has once known power and abused it may be born again without voice learning humility. A soul that has taken for granted the love of others may return in loneliness learning presence. A soul that has betrayed may become the one betrayed not as punishment, but as initiation into empathy. These karmic scripts play out not just in events, but in relationships. Often the people who trigger us most, hurt us most, or challenge us most deeply are members of our soul group, fellow travelers, who have agreed before birth to play specific roles in our awakening. The one who abandons you teaches you self-worth. The one who deceives you teaches discernment. The one who loves you and then asais teaches impermanence and gratitude. These roles are painful but profound. They are soul contracts agreed upon, not in cruelty, but in love to catalyze the next step in your growth. And so the soul begins to navigate life not with blame, but with curiosity, not with bitterness, but with reverence. It stops asking, why did they do this to me? And starts asking, what did my soul agree to learn through this? This does not mean becoming a doormat or accepting abuse. It means taking back your power by understanding the deeper truth beneath the pain. Karma is not fate. It is a pattern, and all patterns can be transformed through awareness. The moment the soul becomes conscious of a karmic loop, it is given the power to choose differently. And that is when the soul moves from reaction to response, from unconscious repetition to conscious evolution. But the universe will test that awareness. You will be given opportunities to repeat the old pattern. Will you betray again or stay in integrity? Will you abandon or show up? Will you control or surrender? These moments are not tests in the academic sense, they are mirrors. They reflect where your soul is on its path. And each time you choose growth over comfort, truth over avoidance, love over fear, you burn through karma. You free yourself from old loops, and you begin to write a new story. This process is not instant. It is layered. You may think you've healed a wound only to find it again in a different disguise. But this is not failure. It is refinement. The universe brings you deeper into the pattern each time, not to punish, but to liberate. You see, karma is not just personal. It is also ancestral, collective, even planetary. Some souls incarnate to heal family lineages, to break cycles of violence, silence, shame. Others come to shift the collective, to bring light into systems built on fear. These souls often face great resistance because they carry not only their own karma, but the echoes of many. But they are powerful beyond measure because they are not here to repeat history. They are here to rewrite it. And so the soul moves through the spiral of karma, sometimes falling, sometimes flying, but always evolving. With each choice made in consciousness, the wheel turns less. The soul rises more, until one day it is no longer bound by karma, but guided by dharma, the soul's true purpose. And that is the next step in the journey. And so as the soul works through its karmic layers, shedding old identities like dried leaves from a tree, there comes a moment, a quiet, unassuming moment, when the soul begins to remember. Not with the mind, but with the heart. Not through logic, but through resonance. It may come suddenly in the silence of a sunrise or the midst of grief, or slowly like a seed germinating underground, unnoticed, but unstoppable. This is the moment of spiritual awakening, the sacred turning point when the soul, weary from lifetimes of seeking outward, begins to turn inward. For the first time, the soul looks not just at life, but into life. It asks questions, not just of circumstance, but of essence. Who am I beyond this body? What is the source of this longing that nothing in the world seems to satisfy? Why do I feel homesick for something I cannot name? These questions do not come from confusion. They come from remembrance. Because the soul in its core already knows the answers. It has simply forgotten. Covered by years of conditioning trauma, distraction, and false identity. Awakening is not about becoming someone new. It is about stripping away everything you are not until only truth remains. And truth at first is terrifying because it asks for everything. It demands that we face our shadows, challenge our beliefs, release our attachments. It calls for radical honesty and unshakable courage. The awakening soul begins to see that much of what it once called life was illusion roles, masks, inherited fears, borrowed dreams. The awakening soul starts to feel like a stranger in a familiar world. Old friendships may no longer fit. Career paths that once felt safe now feel stifling. Conversations once exciting now seem empty. The soul begins to crave something deeper: authenticity, connection, purpose, silence. This phase is often marked by what mystics call the dark night of the soul, a period of profound inner death. It feels as if everything is crumbling, and in many ways it is. But what's truly dying is the false self, the egoic identity that once held your world together. Without it, you feel naked, vulnerable, disoriented, but also free. Because in the absence of illusion, truth begins to emerge. You start to feel the presence of something greater, call it spirit, the universe, source, God, higher self. This presence is not outside of you. It is within you, around you, and everything. You begin to notice synchronicities, numbers, symbols, dreams that guide you. You begin to trust intuition over logic. You feel a pull towards sacred spaces, ancient teachings, healing modalities. You are not becoming strange, you are becoming real. The soul is remembering its lineage, its mission, its divinity. And in that remembrance, it begins to live differently. You become more sensitive to energy, more attuned to the emotions of others. You start to feel the weight of collective suffering and the light of collective hope. You can no longer harm without hurting yourself. Compassion blooms like a wildflower in your chest. Forgiveness becomes a natural extension of your peace. But awakening is not a destination. It is a doorway. And the moment you step through, your real work begins. Because now you must walk through life with open eyes, no more hiding, no more blaming, no more sleepwalking through your days. You are now responsible, not in the heavy sense, but in the sacred sense. You are aware, you are awake, and that awareness changes everything. You begin to align your choices with your truth. You let go of what no longer serves, not out of anger, but out of reverence for your own energy. You speak with intention. You love without clinging. You act without needing to control the outcome. This is not perfection. This is presence. And it is powerful. Because when the soul lives in alignment with its truth, it becomes a channel for wisdom, for healing, for light. Others feel it. Without trying, you become a mirror for those around you. Your mere presence invites them to rise. And yet this phase is not without challenge. Awakening can be isolating. You may feel misunderstood, even ridiculed. The path is narrow, steep, and often lonely, but you are never truly alone. Because all around the world, millions of other souls are awakening too quietly, courageously, painfully remembering who they are. Together, you form a web of light across the earth, a network of awakening hearts, each beating in resonance with the universal rhythm. This is the pulse of evolution. The soul, no longer asleep, begins to consciously participate in its unfolding. And from this sacred state of awareness, it steps into the next chapter. The mastery of energy, the alignment with higher principles, the embodiment of divine will. The soul is no longer just a student. It begins to become a teacher, a healer, a servant of the light. As the soul awakens and begins to remember its purpose, a deeper map of its evolution begins to unfold, one not drawn on paper, but etched in energy. Across countless ancient traditions, mystics and sages have spoken of 7 stages or layers of consciousness, 7 centers of energy through which the soul matures, expands, and ultimately returns to its source. Some know them as chakras, others as rays spheres or initiations. Regardless of name, they represent the soul's path from survival to divinity. This energetic ladder is not just symbolic, it is experiential. It is the inner architecture of our being. At the foundation lies the first energy center, the root, the survival center located at the base of the spine. This is where the soul, newly embodied, learns to exist in the material world. Here, the focus is on physical safety, food, shelter, tribe, and territory. It is the domain of fear and security. In this stage, the soul's primary lesson is trust. Trust in life, in the body, in existence itself. Until this center is healed, higher evolution is unstable. Next, the soul rises to the second center, the sacral, located just below the navel. This is the realm of emotion, desire, sexuality, and pleasure. Here the soul learns about duality, attraction and repulsion, connection and rejection. It is in this space that creativity is born and boundaries are tested. The challenge of this stage is to honor desire without being ruled by it, to express without manipulating, to experience joy without attachment. The journey continues into the third center, the solar plexus just above the stomach. This is the seat of will, identity, and power. The soul here learns autonomy, how to act, assert, and influence the world. This stage often involves ego battles, power struggles, and the forging of self-worth. The great task here is transforming control into confidence, domination into direction, and ego into authentic empowerment. As the soul transcends personal ambition, it enters the fourth center, the heart. This is the true pivot point in the soul's evolution. Here the soul begins to value compassion over conquest, unity over separation. Love, forgiveness, empathy, and service begin to replace fear and self-centeredness. This is the first major awakening, where the soul begins to see all beings as reflections of itself. The heart does not seek to escape the world, but to embrace it. From the heart, the soul rises into the fifth center, the throat. This is the center of expression, truth, and vibration. Here the soul learns the power of the word, the vibration of intention. It is no longer enough to feel deeply. The soul must now speak its truth, live authentically, and create consciously. Many fear this stage because it demands visibility, courage, and alignment between inner knowing and outer action. But once mastered, this center becomes a gateway to real manifestation. Then comes the sixth center, the third eye, located between the eyebrows. This is the domain of intuition, vision, and higher wisdom. The soul here begins to perceive beyond form, beyond duality. Patterns become clear, illusions dissolve, dreams become messages, symbols guide the path. At this stage, the soul begins to operate not from memory, but from direct insight. Time feels fluid. The boundaries between inner and outer worlds blur. The world becomes a mirror, and the self becomes transparent. Finally, the soul reaches the seventh center, the crown, located at the top of the head. This is the place of unity, of divine consciousness. Here the soul no longer sees itself as separate, but as an extension of the One. The illusions of identity, time, and division fall away. What remains is silence, stillness, and surrender. The soul no longer seeks, it simply is. This is enlightenment, not as escape, but as embodiment. It is the place where the divine and human merge, not through doctrine, but through presence. But this map is not a ladder to climb once. It is a spiral path revisited again and again. You may be rooted in the heart while still clearing wounds in the root. You may speak your truth while still wrestling with the desire for control. Evolution is not linear. It is layered, nuanced, alive. Each center is a temple, a lesson, a portal, and each has its own shadows: fear in the root, shame in the sacral, guilt in the solar plexus. Grief in the heart lies in the throat, illusion in the third eye, and attachment in the crown. These shadows are not enemies, they are guardians. They protect the gate until we are ready, until we are honest, until we are humble, until we are willing to shed the old story and step into a greater truth. The soul, as it moves through these layers, becomes a bridge, a living temple, a beacon of integration, no longer split between heaven and earth, but embodying both. This is the map, not a dogma, but a guide, not rigid, but radiant. It is yours to walk, to remember, to master. Once the soul has mapped its internal terrain and passed through the thresholds of energetic awakening, there comes a subtle yet powerful shift, a turning from self-focus to selflessness, from seeking for personal evolution to offering oneself as a vessel for collective healing. This is the stage where true maturity of the soul begins to flower, and the fragrance of that flowering is gratitude, acceptance, and service. Gratitude is not just a polite feeling, It is the recognition that every experience, however painful, however confusing, was a stepping stone carved by grace. The mature soul no longer asks, "Why did this happen to me?" but instead whispers, "Thank you for shaping me." It no longer curses the storms of the past, but honors them as sacred initiations. Gratitude transforms memory into meaning. It transmutes pain into power. And in this sacred alchemy, the soul rises. It becomes lighter, freer, more expansive. It begins to see even the darkest parts of its journey as essential threads in the tapestry of awakening. Gratitude is what anchors the soul in the present moment, where nothing is missing and everything is meaningful. But gratitude alone is not enough. It must be joined by acceptance. Acceptance is not resignation. It is not the passive tolerance of injustice or the denial of sorrow. It is the radical, courageous act of saying yes to what is. It is the realization that life is not wrong even when it is hard. That reality as it unfolds carries a higher wisdom even if we do not yet understand it. Acceptance is the soul's way of surrendering control and allowing flow. It is the moment we stop fighting life and start dancing with it. The soul in this state ceases to judge its own emotions or path. Anger is not bad. Sadness is not weakness. Confusion is not failure. They are all movements within the great ocean of consciousness. And as the soul learns to hold these experiences with compassion rather than resistance, suffering dissolves. Not because pain disappears, but because the struggle against it is released. This gentle surrender opens the heart wider than ever before. And from that open heart arises the deepest longing of all, not to be saved, but to serve. True service is not martyrdom. It is not self-neglect or people-pleasing. It is the natural overflow of a soul that has found its center. It is the echo of the divine impulse to create, heal, and uplift. The mature soul does not serve to gain recognition or approval. It serves because it remembers that all beings are part of itself. It recognizes the light in others even when they cannot see it themselves. It speaks truth not to be right, but to awaken remembrance. It holds space not to control outcomes, but to invite transformation. Service is the soul's song made manifest in action. It is the invisible thread that connects one heart to another. And in this flow of giving, the soul receives more than it ever imagined. It finds meaning that no achievement could offer. It discovers joy that is not tied to circumstances. It begins to live not for itself, but through itself, for something greater, something timeless. The soul becomes an agent of love, a lighthouse in the storm, a silent companion to those still waking up. It does not preach, it radiates. It does not convert, it embodies. And its presence alone becomes a medicine. Gratitude, acceptance, and service are not final destinations. They are ongoing practices, sacred tools, the golden thread woven through every step of the soul's spiral ascent. Each day offers new invitations to be grateful when it would be easier to complain, to accept when the ego wants to control, to serve when the world teaches us to take. The soul that chooses these things again and again becomes refined like fire-tested gold. It becomes less reactive, more rooted, less judgmental, more joyful, less afraid, more free. And ultimately, it becomes a living bridge between the human and the divine, a temple not made of stone but of stillness, presence, and love. Having walked through the ancient pathways of remembrance, karma, awakening, and energetic alignment, the soul eventually reaches a point where insight must become embodiment, where knowledge becomes practice and awareness becomes action. It is not enough to understand that challenges are opportunities for growth. The real transformation comes when we live that truth moment to moment. So how does one begin to meet life's storms with the clarity of the soul rather than the panic of the ego? The first step is pause. The simple act of stopping, of breathing deeply before reacting, creates a sacred space in which the soul can speak. In that pause, the old stories lose power. The emotional charge softens, and a deeper question arises. What is really happening here beneath the surface? Most people live at the surface of events, reacting to what is said or done without questioning what it reveals. But the awakened soul looks deeper. When someone hurts you, it does not immediately shout enemy, it whispers mirror. When a door closes, it does not spiral into despair. It asks redirection or protection. This shift in inquiry is everything. It does not deny emotion. In fact, it honors it. You allow yourself to feel the fear, the grief, the anger, but you no longer let those feelings make your choices. Instead, you ask what lesson is hidden within them. To truly integrate soul awareness, the second practice is presence. Presence is not passively sitting in silence. It is the radical act of being here fully without rushing to escape discomfort or chase the next moment. Presence is choosing to experience your experience not conceptually but viscerally. When the body tightens, you notice it. When the breath shortens, you deepen it. When the mind spins, you return to now. In presence, you discover that pain is bearable, that fear is manageable, that clarity is possible. The third practice is inquiry, asking better questions. Instead of why me, ask what in me is being invited to evolve. Instead of how do I fix this, ask what truth is being revealed through this. These questions are not meant to create guilt. They are keys that unlock understanding. And understanding is what dissolves suffering. When you understand, you no longer resist. When you stop resisting, you start healing. The fourth practice is choice. Every challenge carries with it an energetic fork in the road. One path leads back into fear, ego, blame, and old patterns. The other leads into trust, courage, and new embodiment. The choice is rarely comfortable, but it is always available. When you feel misunderstood, do you attack or clarify? When you feel unseen, do you withdraw or open further? When life delays your desires, do you grasp harder or surrender deeper? Choice is your power. It is your brush, and each decision is a stroke on the canvas of your soul. The fifth practice is integration. After every challenge, after every moment of growth, take time to reflect. Ask yourself, what did I learn? How did I respond differently than I would have before? Where did I grow? Integration turns scattered insight into embodied wisdom, and wisdom is what allows you to guide others, not with words, but with presence. The sixth practice is devotion, not necessarily in the religious sense, but in the deeply personal, soul-level way. Devotion to growth, devotion to truth, devotion to becoming the clearest channel for love you can be. Devotion is what carries you through the moments when logic fails, when pain lingers, when clarity is distant. It is what keeps the heart open even when it wants to close. Devotion turns your daily life into a ceremony, your struggles into sacred rites. And finally, the seventh practice is compassion. Compassion for yourself as you stumble. Compassion for others who are still asleep. Compassion for a world that is learning slowly and painfully how to love itself. Without compassion, knowledge becomes arrogance. Without compassion, truth becomes a weapon. But with it, everything softens, everything expands, everything heals. These practices are not rules, they are invitations. You will forget them, and that's okay. The path of soul evolution is not about perfection. It is about remembering again and again. Every day is another chance to choose differently, to show up as your soul, not your wound, to respond with wisdom, not reaction, to live with presence, not escape, to love even when it hurts. And with each of these small, holy choices, you build a new life, not just outside, but within. You become a living testament to what is possible when a human being remembers they are divine. And now, as we draw the circle close, not to end it, but to acknowledge its wholeness, let us return to the very beginning, to that quiet question that once echoed through the deepest chambers of your heart. Why is this happening to me? That question, born from pain, confusion, and longing, was never a sign of weakness. It was the very first breath of your awakening, the first stirring of your soul beneath the weight of survival karma and illusion. And now, with everything you've remembered along this journey, from the primal struggle for security to the transcendence of energetic awareness, from karmic repetition to conscious service, you can finally begin to hear the deeper truth whispering back. It happened not to hurt you, but to awaken you. Not to break you, but to return you to yourself. You see, the soul does not evolve by escaping life, but by embracing it, by diving so fully into the chaos, the beauty, the suffering, and the joy of human experience that it extracts from each moment a sacred thread of transformation. You have always been on this path, even when you didn't know it. Even in your darkest hours, your soul was not lost, it was learning. Even in your most painful betrayals, your heart was not weak, it was being opened. Even in your failures, your spirit was not broken, it was being refined. There is no step you took that was wasted, no mistake that cannot be transmuted, no scar that cannot become a symbol of strength. You were never meant to be perfect, You were meant to remember. And in remembering, you return. Not to who you once were, but to who you have always been beneath the noise, the observer, the witness, the presence, the light. And though the journey often feels lonely, you are never truly alone. All around you walk other souls quietly, courageously, navigating their own spirals of awakening. Some are just beginning to ask the questions. Others are knee-deep in the unraveling. A few are walking as guides not because they are better, but because they remember a little sooner. And all of them, all of us, are part of the same great return, the migration of consciousness back to wholeness. When you cry in the night, someone else is doing the same across the ocean. When you forgive someone who never said sorry, a stranger you'll never meet is finding the courage to do the same. When you sit in silence and offer your pain to the sky, 1,000 stars pulse brighter in response. This is not just poetic. It is real. Because we are all connected, not metaphorically, but energetically. Your evolution affects the collective. Your healing ripples outward, reshaping not only your future, but humanity's. You are not just living for yourself. You are living as a channel through which the divine learns to know itself and form. So walk your path with dignity. Let the tears come when they must. Let the joy arise when it can. Let the silence teach you what the mind cannot. Let your wounds remind you of your strength. Let your breath be a prayer. Let your presence be a gift. You are a soul in motion, a star in human skin, a piece of the infinite becoming conscious of itself. There is no destination, only depth. No final answer, only deeper questions. No permanent arrival, only unfolding. And every moment you choose love over fear, truth over safety, surrender over control, you are evolving. You are rising, you are remembering. And that remembrance is the greatest miracle of all. So the next time life breaks your heart or tests your limits, do not curse the sky. Place your hand on your chest, close your eyes, and whisper, "This too is part of my return, because you are not alone. You never were. You are not broken. You never were. You are not lost. You are simply on the path homeward, inward, upward. And the more you walk it, the more you see you were never moving forward. You were always moving back, back to truth, back to presence, back to the center of your being. You were never becoming someone else. You were always becoming more fully you. And that beloved soul is the true journey of evolution. Welcome home.